Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me tonight is going to be Nick Redfern, and he's a returning visitor to my show that I got to tell you guys, it's always a pleasure to have him. I've read 3 or 4 or more of his books, and he's got some of the most fascinating books out there. The more I read about this man, the more I realize that he is really heavily into more than just one area of paranormal phenomena. I knew he was interested in cryptozoology, a bit about the Loch Ness Monster and, you know, about Bigfoot. And then I began to figure out he was also into UFOs and researched that rather extensively. And then I found out he also had a real fondness for the Men in Black. And now I'm finding out about top secret government installations. He's also interested in ghosts. And I'm like, well, here you got a gentleman that has really done a lot of study in a lot of different areas. And it's no wonder that he's a keynote speaker at, you know, many different events, including the Ask Be Foul Symposium that has been going on at Taos, New Mexico lately, that used to be at Angel Fire. I know he's going to be coming up pretty soon at the Alchemy event, 11/11. It's one of the keynote speakers. So it's no wonder people want to have him come out and share some information about it, because he's done so much research. He's got a lot to share. We're going to try to see what we can squeeze in tonight in 1 hour, but I'm already invited him to come back for some more in the future, probably sometime in December, January, when we get things settled down a little bit more. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and bring him into the show here. Nick, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, Royce, I'm doing good, thanks. How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. I was just telling everybody in the chat room to refresh and hit the play button that the show was live. I haven't got a thing that automatically reloads the page like Blog Talk used to have when I was over there, but little bit by little bit I improve on it as time goes on. You know what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly what you mean.
But I tell you what, last month I went and bought me a brand spanking new laptop that's got 6 gigabytes of memory and one of those new IE quad core 7 processors. That's a lot faster than my old 4 gig memory was with its dual core processor. And I mean, you would be surprised what it did for the quality of the sound of the show. And I'm like, it was a good investment for me.
Good.
So at any rate, like I was saying to the guest earlier while you was listening in there, I got to hand it to you. You are one fascinating person, and I can tell by reading material that you do that you have a real love for all kinds of unexplained phenomena, not just any 1 or 2 categories, in other words, but you're pretty much got a real interest in anything that's unexplained, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that the 2 sort of main areas that I'm interested in are cryptozoology, the subject of, you know, or the search for unknown animals like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, and the UFO subject. Those are the main ones I sort of focus on, and, you know, I occasionally sort of delve into other areas as well. But I guess I'm probably more interested in some of the more alternative theories for what might lie behind the UFO and crypto zoology fields, rather than, you know, just the conventional approach. You know, I'm kind of look outside the box a little bit for some of the answers.
Yeah, I noticed that you do, and I also noticed another thing that you always like to do is you like to go back to the Freedom of Information window in some cases for any, you know, declassified documents the government may have or other sources may have. You like to go back to the original newspaper clippings of when the event first occurred, or go back to the actual key witnesses themselves. But I know you always like to get as close to the original source as you can possibly get.
Well, I think, you know, what I try and do is sort of treat this, you know, because I work as a journalist, just a, you know, mainstream journalist, sort of feature writing, you know. So I kind of try and treat the subject in the same way that I'd treat, you know, a feature on, I don't know, a murder or whatever, you know, where you go back and try and verify the information, find out who the primary sources were, you know, look for, like you said, additional corroborative information through things like the Freedom of Information Act, and just try and build up a picture in the same way that you would build up a picture in any sort of news story. and because I think that way, rather than just saying, oh, this came from Mr. X or whatever, which can be a fascinating story, but it doesn't really help the reader or the listener to get a full grasp on, the complexities of it, or even me as a researcher, if you've just got somebody approaching you anonymously, as sometimes happens. So, it's always good to get as much background information as you can.
Well, I got to hand it to you, in my opinion. I think you're extremely thorough in what you do. And I was reading your chapter in this book, Ghosts, Spirits, and Haunting. And I know this is an anthology that, a lot of different authors have got a chapter in this here. And I think one of them even has 2 chapters. I might be mistaken on that. But, I mean, it's a lot of different people from different areas in the field that have their take on it. Parapsychologists, regular ghost investigators. And in your case, you got a chapter in here for monsters of the spectral kind, which when I read that heading for that for the chapter, I was like, well, there's something entirely new to me. You've mentioned creatures in this book that I never heard of. You know what? In your book, I want to say Men in Black, or no, it was the one before that. Trying to think of the name of it. NASA Conspiracies. Mm-hmm. You came up with the Houston Batman I never heard of. And, well, Nick, you've done it again. You come up with the Devil Dog I never heard of also.
Well, there's a lot of weird creatures. When New Page, so as people know, that they're putting out this series of titles under the banner of Exposed, Uncovered, and Declassified. That's sort of the overall title of this new series. And back in the summer, they had a volume out on UFOs, and the new one's on ghosts. And then at the end of the year, there's one coming out on ancient mysteries from sort of, pyramid eras and things like that, which I'm also doing a chapter for. But the new one is all about ghosts. And, of course, and they said to me, well, do you want to write a chapter for it? I was like, well, yeah, sure. But, I'll be the first to admit that sort of regular ghost investigations, the sort of things you see on Ghost Hunters on the TV and things like that, that's not really an area I've delved into a great deal, sort of straightforward hauntings, haunted houses, that sort of thing. Not for any particular reason other than the fact that I haven't done much in that field, so I kind of take the view that because I'm more sort of conversant with UFOs and cryptozoology, it's kind of pointless me sort of jumping in now, blundering around into somebody's ghost investigations, when they're far more informed about that subject than I am. But the one area of ghosts, if you like, that I have delved into are things like animal ghosts and sort of the aspects of certain cryptozoology cases that seem far more paranormal and supernatural than they do flesh and blood. And there's a surprisingly large number of these cases. And so that's what I did with this chapter, was to sort of point out that in some reports, I don't say all of them by any means, of course, but in sort of a small percentage of reports, there seems to be evidence that some of these sort of strange creatures we look for might be sort of more than flesh and blood, or paradoxically less than flesh and blood. They do seem far more spectral than animal-like.
And what really got my attention about what you're saying about them seeming more spectral-like was when I read in this here chapter that Jim Mars, I think, had a similar opinion, or thought that this was possible as well, especially given the fact that, to my knowledge, this isn't exactly his forte. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know he was it, because I know he's usually into, UFO and government cover-up conspiracy, so it took me by surprise that he had a comment on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing. I mean, you're quite right. Jim's actually a good friend of mine, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago last, and he only lives about a 30-minute drive from me, so, occasionally we'll hang out and whatever at lectures and things like that. And you're quite right. Jim's sort of primarily known for a lot of very good books on conspiracy theories like Alien Agenda. His research into the Kennedy assassination and things like that. So he's sort of deeply knowledgeable and known for his conspiracy research. But one of the areas that Jim also dug deeply into and wrote a book out was the secret history of the government's remote viewing programs. That's to say, psychic spies, using their sort of ESP, if you like, to spy on the Kremlin in simplistic terms. That was the basic thrust of a lot of the remote viewing programs that the CIA and the Army and the Defense Intelligence Agency undertook in the 70s particularly. But one of the things that Jim found out was that at one point some of the remote viewers actually remote viewed Loch Ness in Scotland. Loch Ness, of course, being, the home of the famous Loch Ness Monster, or monsters, depending on if you view these things as being a colony rather than just one animal, which would be, massively unlikely that, one creature could live this long and be responsible for all these reports. So if there is something strange and flesh and blood in Loch Ness, there would have to be a whole colony of them. But one of the interesting things that Jim found out was that when the remote viewers were sort of focusing their minds or their soul or spirit, however you want to determine, the way they do this, but were actually targeting Loch Ness with their minds, they said they actually sort of picked up the movement of some sort of large body beneath the surface of the loch, which would fit in with the reports of the Loch Ness Monster. And a lot of those sightings tended to fit the imagery that we have of the Loch Ness Monster, this sort of long neck, humpback animal with flippers that kind of resembles the plesiosaurs of the Jurassic era. But what Jim also noted was that when the government's remote viewers began to sort of dig further into this and kind of focus their minds really intently on the Loch Ness Monster, they said it seemed to just vanish. Not only did it sort of vanish in their minds, but they got the impression that it had literally vanished from the loch. And, of course, there was no way to explain that in simple terms, in terms of it being a surviving relic from the prehistoric era, etc. But Jim said that, when the remote viewing guys got together and discussed, how the Loch Ness Monster could actually vanish like this, they came up with an interesting theory that maybe the creature of Loch Ness aren't actually flesh and blood animals, but could they actually be nothing less than like ghostly plesiosaurs? The idea being that if human beings, if there is survival after death and, our spirits can return, why could that not happen in the animal kingdom? And if a person haunts, a place they used to live like a haunted house, why could not, some long extinct animal haunt the old lakes and lochs where it used to live? Is it any more controversial than the idea that we could haunt, a location as well? And it's kind of an intriguing theory that the government should actually have been looking into this and, looking at the idea that some of these lake monsters, as I said, weren't flesh and blood, but really were sort of returned ghosts of long dead, extinct animals.
And, that really does make a lot of sense now that I've read it and that you're talking about it. It's just not the sort of thing that, just pops into your mind unless somebody presents it. Didn't pop into my mind anyway.
Mine either before.
But it does make a lot of sense. I mean, animals are like human. They're made out of energy partly, at least like we are. So something has to happen after they pass on. They got to have some form of immortality just like we do, in other words. But
yeah, and I think, it does make sense that if you subscribe to the idea that people can kind of, or some essence of us after death, can hang around in a place that was sort of, welcoming to us or known to us or we felt comfortable, maybe animals do the same. Maybe that's why, you can find countless reports where, somebody's pet dog dies and then a week later, they wake up in the middle of the night hearing the dog scratching or barking, as if the animal's still saying, hey, everything's cool, I'm still around, don't worry. And, is that really any different, to an ancient animal haunting an equally ancient body of water? It's not really that different at all, I guess.
Another thing that you mentioned while you're on that there topic is that one guy suspected that one of these animals was actually being punished by, or was a human that had been in prison that was coming back in animal form as a punishment that was doing these things.
Yeah, this is a theory or an idea, if you like, that was quite prevalent in Britain, actually up till pretty much the 19th century, so the latter part of the 1800s. And it goes back, it's like an ancient sort of mythological / legend in the British Isles, the idea that people who, have done some wrong in this life, can sort of return in the form of either like a regular animal or some sort of monstrous type creature as punishment. I guess in some respects it kind of, ties in with the whole issue of like Buddhism, where, what you do in this life you get in the next. And sometimes, the idea with Buddhism, you come back until you get it right. And it's kind of like a parallel to that, but the idea being that, somebody does something wrong in this life and they may come back as something like a monstrous Bigfoot-type creature, or they could come back as like a ghostly black dog with glowing eyes that would sort of be forced to, roam the landscape forever and a day, that sort of thing. And, whether or not the theory has any merit to it, the important thing is that this was a very sort of prevalent fear in, sort of 1800s Britain. And, I think part of it could have been amplified by people telling the story to prevent people, from breaking the law. It's like, you do this, you're going to come back as whatever. So it probably had a psychological angle to it as well. But there are a number of famous stories, a couple of which I relate in the chapter, about people apparently dying and then, coming back in animal form, but in a spectral animal form.
Right. And like you said, what you were saying earlier, that's a very good possibility, and it could be a form of punishment. We don't really know exactly how karma works. We know that some things we pay for in this life, some things in the next life, or that's at least what we're taught, according to Buddhists or some New Age beliefs, or even some of the Hermetic teachings or alchemy. But we have not yet really experienced it, or if we have, we don't have a recall of having experienced it, should I say. But it would also, I would think, apply to the Mothman as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually, sort of delve into Mothman in the book, but certainly, a lot of these sort of large winged type creatures like Mothman and the one you mentioned earlier, the Houston Batman, which was a Mothman type creature seen in Houston back in the early 50s, a lot of them do seem to have this ability to sort of flit in and out of reality and seem, at one point they seem tangible, and then at another point they're intangible, and I mean, who knows, when I think, the whole issue of life after death and what it means, it's probably one of the biggest mysteries of all, if not the biggest mystery, even bigger than things like UFOs or Bigfoot or whatever, I think it's the one question everybody wants answering, or wants proof. Is there life after death? And if there is, what does it mean? Is it literal heaven and hell? Is it just some weird sort of dreamlike Matrix world? Is it reincarnation? Or what is it? The fact that we're having to write books about it demonstrates that, for as long as the human race has existed, either there's something, and if there is, we don't really find out what it is until, we've passed on. And by then, for the most part, we're not able, apparently, to sort of accurately or fully demonstrate, when people talk about spirits coming back, it's always, there's some difficulty involved where they're not, although there's some communication, it's never like sit down over a cup of coffee or anything. It's almost like, even if we can come back and relate some of it, there's difficulty in doing it. So I think that's possibly why it remains such a mystery.
Yeah, and, it makes a lot of sense on that there. Do you think there's any kind of connection with the UFO phenomena to any of these other cryptozoology? Because I know some people think that, some of the Bigfoot, I know some people think all are, some think some are, visitors from other planets as well. And I know, like in your Men in Black, you did mention there was like more than one source for a Man in Black. I thought maybe the same applied to, these creatures, in other words.
Oh, yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why the subject's so complicated, because there's no doubt in my mind at all that some of these creatures that we go looking for are flesh and blood animals. For example, there's one from the island of Sumatra known as Orang Pendek, which is like a small, sort of 4-foot-tall, ape-like creature that reputedly walks upright and that some people think could be a type of primitive human. I don't for 1 minute think that is a ghostly animal. I think that is a real animal that science hasn't classified yet. And there are some indications that a lot of the so-called Bigfoot-type reports from Russia and remote parts of Siberia and Russia, they sound far more like surviving pockets of Neanderthals than Bigfoot. So I'd be more inclined to think that they fall into that category than they do anything ghostly. So I think there's two strands to this. You know, there are the straightforward animals that science just hasn't found yet, and there's these weirder ones. Now, you're quite right that some people have kind of suggested a link between Bigfoot and UFOs. I mean, one person who wrote a very good book about this is a guy named Stan Gordon. Stan had a book out about a year ago called Silent Invasion, which is a study of a whole wave of UFO and combined Bigfoot activity in Pennsylvania in the 1970s. And it's sort of very good regional study that Stan, you know, was a younger guy then and traveled around the entire area and chronicled the whole puzzle. So, you know, some people do make that connection. Now, I haven't made in the chapter sort of a direct connection with nuts and bolts aliens with Bigfoot, but what I do speak about is an area of Texas just outside Houston called the Big Thicket. The Big Thicket is like a very large body of forest, huge body of forest land. You know, a lot of people who have never traveled to Texas think it's all sort of plains and desert. But East Texas is very heavily wooded, forested even. And the Big Thicket is this massive, nearly impenetrable area of forest. And it has this road running through it called Bragg Road. And Bragg Road locally is known as Ghost Light Road. And the reason being that for many years, certainly since there's been sort of recordings in newspapers and things like that, there have been sightings of these ghostly, sort of ethereal balls of light that flit in and out the trees of the Big Thicket. And they're kind of described as like the more famous Marfa lights of Texas, which I'm sure most people have heard of, you know, these sort of floating or flying balls of light about the size of a basketball that seem either under intelligent control or that could be some sort of energy-based intelligence themselves. But and so by definition, you know, they are UFOs. They're things flying in the sky that we cannot identify, or we haven't identified them. But because we can't identify them, you know, they become UFOs, even if they're not sort of nuts and bolts craft, which they're clearly not. But what's interesting is that in the very same locations in the Big Thicket where we get the sightings of the ghost lights, we also get significant numbers of Bigfoot-type reports as well, literally in the exact same stretches of the road. And to me, this has to be beyond coincidence. When you've got two anomalies, ghost lights and Bigfoot, seen in exactly the same place, then to me we have to, you know, the responsibility is on us to look at the connection. Now, a lot of cryptozoologists don't like touching stories that suggest Bigfoot, you know, isn't just an ape that science hasn't found yet. Some of them get quite hostile to that scenario. But, you know, for me, I don't care. You know, if the reports are out there and the witnesses are telling us, look, there's something weird going on with Bigfoot, then we shouldn't just ignore these stories because it doesn't fit in with certain belief systems. You know, we should look at these cases. And the fact is, when we go looking, we find a lot of reports where Bigfoot comes across as weird and paranormal and associated with things like these strange balls of light, and even reports of Bigfoot like vanishing in a flash of light or in the blink of an eye, which, you know, no normal animal can do that.
Right. Now, I was also going to mention that in the chat room, Heidi was saying, I have a camp in the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania, and I was told that Bigfoot was there, and she was always curious if he was really there. So I told her I would ask you if you heard of any reports from there yourself. I'm
not exactly sure of that national forest, but what I would recommend Heidi does is to get a hold of that book by Stan Gordon, Silent Invasion it's called, because that only, it's a thick book, I think about 200-300 pages, and it just deals with Bigfoot sightings in Pennsylvania. So, you know, if there were any other sightings from that particular national forest that Heidi talks about, then they may well be in Stan's book. And he makes a good case for putting Bigfoot in sort of a very paranormal camp, if you like, in that book. So she might like that one.
Actually, she probably would, especially if she has a camp spot there.
Yeah, well, there might be, a lot of cases. I'm not sure, but I can't remember now. But, there may well be more cases in the book, from the immediate area surrounding it as well, perhaps.
Now, you're up in the north of me in the Dallas, Arlington, Fort Worth area.
Yeah.
And I know you was talking about some research you did in West Texas, which is going to probably be somewhere between, San Antonio and probably El Paso, where it was, because you was talking about barren stretches up there. I think it was called the Big Thicket, or am I getting it mixed up?
Oh, no, the Big Thicket was the one where they had the ghost lights, yeah.
Okay, but the one in West Texas, am I right? That's going to be out there probably between San Antonio and El Paso, where you was talking about there was several acres or 800 acres or something that was a big area that Bigfoot was supposed to be pretty heavy in?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, most people don't associate Bigfoot with Texas. Now, as I said, East Texas is heavily populated by reports. There's countless reports, literally hundreds of people seeing Bigfoot-type creatures, particularly the closer you get to the border with Louisiana. But, even I'll admit, West Texas, where it's full of plains and it's hot and barren and dry, and, you're bordering close on New Mexico, it becomes more and more difficult to accept the idea that, sort of 7-8 foot tall, muscular, big apes could survive there, number one, without being detected, and number two, have a sufficient food supply, in a fairly sparse, barren area of cotton fields and, dry, arid locations. And yet we get reports from there. And again, everything about the habitats, if you like, and the eating habits of large animals flies out of the window with creatures like Bigfoot, where, they look for all the world like normal animals. But when we research, particularly in West Texas, the food supply, the frequency with which farm animals actually go missing under mysterious circumstances, which is hardly ever, then you realize that these things should be eating the stuff that they don't seem to be eating.
Yeah, that was something that you mentioned. They should be eating a huge mass, but yet there's very little being eaten, given their size, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, people say, well, they could live on this and they could live on that. And, that's entirely true. Nobody disputes, that any sort of, animal, providing there's, a sufficient food source, can survive. But, I mean, if you look at, the issue of what regular animals that kind of seem similar, to some of the ones we're talking about, how much they should be eating, or the regular ones do eat, then we see a problem. For example, the big silverback male gorillas that you see in the Congo, I mean, they literally get through, sort of 20, 30 pounds of food, kilograms of food, a day. And that's just to stay alive, more to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we had whole colonies of, animals in the United States, sort of living and thriving on 40 to 50 pounds of food every day, and there's whole colonies of these things, people have estimated Bigfoot's a flesh and blood animal. There could be, 10,000 of them in the U.S., 7,000, 8,000, who knows how many. That's 7,000 or 8,000 animals eating 50 pounds of food a day forever. We would be seeing more evidence of this. We might not be seeing so much evidence in the wild, if they're living on animals they catch or apples and things like that in the wild. But, when it comes to flesh, etc., we're just not seeing enough farm animals sort of stolen or going vanishing every day. And also in a lot of, large forests, they're very large forests, but the abundance of, sort of vitamin-rich nutrients and things like that in the available fruit and vegetables isn't necessarily that high. If you're in just a huge forest full of oak trees or fir trees, you're not going to get by on a bit of bark and on fir tree leaves or whatever. So.
No, especially not if you're, over 8 feet tall and weigh over, somewhere between 400 and 600 pounds.
Yeah, you're going to need a huge amount of food. That is one of the big problems that we get with these sort of West Texas cases you're talking about. Everything flies in the face of what's logical.
Well, also, I was want to mention to everybody that if you want to know more about Nick, you could go to his website, www.nickredfern.com, which I'm going to put a link in the chat room to that. And in addition to that, you can learn more about this here book at Amazon.com. I got a copy of it up here at the page under his picture in his description there that you can click to take you right to Amazon. The book that we're discussing today, Ghost, Spirits, and Haunting, can be bought at any Amazon, Barnes & Noble. In fact, that book is, like we said before, an anthology, and Nick's not the only author. He's got a chapter in it. It's a very interesting book, though, and I've read it myself, so has my wife, and she enjoyed it. She didn't get a chance to finish it yet, but she's working on it. At any rate, what I was going to say, Nick's got some own books of his out there, and he's got several of them that can be found at Barnes & Noble and at Amazon or any major bookstore. Nick, how many books do you have out there?
I think I've done 21 or 22, something like that. And the website's actually being overhauled right now, so some of the stuff's out of date, but people can get all the more up-to-date stuff at nickredfernsbooks.blogspot.com. And that's got all the literal latest stuff up to date. But all the books, I think, bar one maybe or two, are still in print, and even those that aren't in print, you can get used copies at Amazon or whatever. So.
Right. Now, also, I was going to say that in addition to that, I've got several of his books linked on the archive pages where I've got his shows that we've done in the past up there. I don't think I have quite all of them yet. I'm working on getting a bookstore from Amazon, one of those virtual ones for your website that will have books that I recommend, mostly from different people that have been on my show that, I've either checked out their book or I've talked to them, and I think that book's got a lot of merit like Nick's do, and I'm going to be making them available here for anybody that's interested. In a special section, in other words, where you can go through it and search it. Because I know, me and Mary Jones, Nick, we were talking about you behind your back one day, and she was talking about she thinks you churn out more books than anybody she ever saw.
Well, well, I guess I stay busy. I have a lot of things I like to write about, and do a lot of research, and I like to sort of, it's a viable, good, interesting story, and I think it's one that people find interesting. I put it out for them to read, I guess. So I'm no good at repairing car engines, or hanging front doors. Writing's pretty much the only thing I can do. I can play the guitar, but I never made it in that field. But other than that, it's kind of like you do what you can do. Don't ask me to sort of the car breaks down, fix the car, or change the. I'm okay at changing a light bulb, but anything else, I'd probably blow the house up. So,
right.
So I do. This is what I can do. So that's what I do.
Well, Nick, I was also going to ask you: do you have a YouTube channel?
No, I don't. But a lot of my stuff is posted at YouTube now and again. So.
Oh, I'm pretty sure of that. Even if you don't post it yourself, a lot of people manage to find it and share it.
People can find me on both Twitter and Facebook, though, on both of those.
Yeah, I was going to add you to my friend list and subscribe to you if you was, is why I asked. For you listeners out there, if y'all want to find me over at YouTube, my channel is Mr. Paranormal. I've also got channels at Daily Motion as well as at Made a Cafe. I'm planning on getting another channel at Break.com, so I'm trying to diversify and make my way around the web a little bit more than what I have been in the past. So look for me at these places if you're already there yourself anyway. Also, I'd like to talk to you, Nick, about the upcoming event you're going to be having. I really think it's very catchy. Alchemy event 11-11-11. I like that 11-11-11.
Well, actually, this is going to be a real departure for me because although I'm giving a lecture, I say departure, it's like a first for me. The lecture I'm doing is actually done from right here. I'm doing a lecture by Skype where it's going to be broadcast like on a big screen in the room. So people will see me, I guess, spectrally live on the screen. So I actually won't be at the conference technically, but I'll be there in electronic format, I guess, on the screen. So.
Well, the beauty of that is you don't have travel expenses.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So I'll just kind of sit in front of the computer and pretend I've got a couple hundred people in front of me and just do the lecture, as I would any other lecture, really. And but yeah, be kind of like a little departure, sort of speaking to the screen and just wondering who's sat there listening. Hopefully there'll be quite a few.
Well, I got to tell you, I use Skype for my shows. I have ever since Blog Talk Radio, and I think it's a marvelous tool because thanks to it, I get for $12 a month for the world subscription and $12 every 3 months for the phone number to call landlines from my computer or, Skype. I can call places like Russia, China, Israel, England, and Scotland, and I can get guests I couldn't have gotten any other way. In other words.
Oh yeah, it's a good deal. I mean, particularly when you're the host and you've got to make those outgoing calls. A lot of people don't realise when you got, your own shows, the cost soon mounts up when you got to do that.
Yeah, but for people that do like me and say like Micah Hanks and Jim Harold and Kevin Smith that host these radio shows. I think it's a marvelous thing for us.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
In fact, I think you're not the only speaker that's going to be on there. I think George Norrie's going to be speaking at the event. Carrie Cassidy, I think. I know David Farman, or I think is his name. Syed David Farman's going to be speaking. Yeah. In fact, he's the one that's throwing the event, isn't he?
That's right. Yeah, David's organising it pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be coming on my show. I want to say, I don't have the schedule open in front of me. I can look at it. November 2nd, if I'm not mistaken, for about 30 minutes. And he's going to talk about, the event then as well. But I thought I would bring it up while I had you on the show because of the fact that you will be speaking for it. What all do you know about the event that wait a minute. Let me double check this before I forget. Okay, yeah. Alchemy event Wednesday, November 2nd at 8 p.m. with Syed David Farman. It's a 30-minute show. And hopefully the people that are listening now will want to come back and hear about it. But you probably know more about the event than I do since you've been working with David on this. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I mean, what I can say, I'm not in front of the computer right now, so I don't actually have all the details of the speakers. But what I can say, there's sort of a good wide range of speakers, talking on an equally wide range of topics. And what certainly David's doing, he's getting a lot of speakers in that possibly many people are going to be attending the event, don't normally get a chance to see. He's getting a very big, wide variety. And, I think hopefully, it'll attract a good crowd and there'll be good interaction and, different things going on. But if you've got, as I said, I'm not in front of the computer, but if you've got the website information, I'm sure, David would be happy if you wanted to sort of, to put it out there. So.
Right. And I'm putting the link to it in the chat room. In addition to that, I've got a link to this up above Nick's picture as well, with the logo. Just click on that logo. It'll take you right to it, and it'll tell you all about the event in better detail than I can at this point, because although I've been talking to him over the last couple of days, I've been so busy preparing for shows and, trying to spread everything through YouTube and all of that I haven't had a chance to delve into it real deeply. I also would like to mention the disclosure petition, that's going on that says Make It Real. I have a logo for that above Nick's picture as well. If you want to click on that, you can sign a petition for disclosure that's been going around for the last couple of weeks. I don't know how many people might have gotten it in group emails, and you've probably seen it at websites and what have you. I added that to my site because I thought it was a good thing to support. I put that up there for you. Also, if y'all want to look below the chat room, I'm starting to list other shows that I would recommend, like Jim Harold's show at jimharold.com and Micah Hanks' show at The Gralian Report. I'm going to try to get Kevin Smith's link up here. I just need to email him and ask him if it's okay if I use his logo. I don't want to do it without asking and maybe get him angry with me. You know how it's probably okay, but it's just one of those things you're just not sure about. Also want to mention my good friends over at United Paranormal International.ning. These people have investigators and researchers in many different fields in many different places around the globe, all consolidated in one place. Great place to learn, a great place, I think, to get help if y'all need it. The logo's on the right-hand side of the page over here if y'all want to click on that and give them a visit and check them out. And, Nick, I know in addition to this here book that you've been working on, Ghosts, Spirits, and Haunting, and your upcoming event, you've also got a book coming out that you really can't go into great detail about right now, because of contract clauses. But I think you said you could outline it for us, and it's the one I was talking about, you coming back in December, January to talk about, the Keep Out.
Yeah, the book's called Keep Out, and it's basically a study of sort of secret, sensitive government installations with links to UFOs. In other words, it's not like a study of, just secret military place or, a study of the CIA headquarters or, the National Security Agency headquarters. It's purely a look at places that have been linked to the UFO phenomenon. So, obviously there's a chapter on Area 51. There's a chapter on the rumors about the so-called Hangar 18 and underground vaults, supposedly where alien bodies are stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base that have become known as the legends of Hangar 18. There's a chapter on the rumored Dulce, on the underground base at Dulce, New Mexico. Chapter on the British Area 51. Information on Russia's Area 51. A strange chapter on sort of government secrets, some connected with UFOs, concerning secret vaults and rooms deep under the London Underground rail system. So there's like a lot of variation in, some of these different places. There's a chapter on stories where people said they've seen strange creatures in caves deep underground that the government may know about. So, in other words, it kind of covers a whole range of government installations around the world, where there's a UFO theme and a tie-in, or a paranormal tie-in in some of the cases. And the book should be out, I think the official release date is like the 14th or the 15th of December. So we're only talking sort of about 7 weeks away, I think, something like that. And, it sort of be pretty much ready to go, I think, by then.
So the market time's getting pretty close on that now, and people are going to really be looking forward to that, I'm sure. Do you know if Amazon's got a wish list up for it yet?
Yeah, actually, you can pre-order it right now. It's already on Amazon, and Barnes and Noble and all, and the rest of them. And I think it's been on there for about a month or so. And the publisher's got a blurb on there about it, where you can see some of the stuff I've just talked about listed, etc. So.
I also want to let everybody that's listening now know that you might want to come back Saturday at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. For those of you listening, it's 8:43 right now. You could take the time that you got right now and figure out if you're an hour ahead of me, an hour behind me, or whatever, and then apply that to the 1 o'clock Central Standard Time and get an idea what time that is in your time zone. We're going to have Philip Coppin on. He's going to be returning a second time to my show. He was a real pleasure the last time when we talked about the Metal Library and a few other things. But this time, we're going to do a 2-hour show. 1 hour we're going to devote to Eric Von Daniken's new book, Odyssey of the Gods, in which he goes into a great deal of detail about ancient Greek myths and how they were probably, a lot of them at least, or a good chunk was really historical fact, perhaps told in a more poetic form. And he thinks it outlines a lot of technology that was ahead of its time. Then he's going to talk about a new book that he's got out called The Ancient Alien Question, which right now, to be honest with you guys, I'm only halfway through Odyssey of the Gods, almost halfway through it, and I haven't even started on The Ancient Alien Question to be able to tell you very much about it. I just barely got past the story of Jason and the Argonauts, so I can't go into great detail without reading more. I can tell you from what I have checked of both of them, it sounds like a really informative, piece of work out there. I don't know about you, Nick. Are you familiar with the Ancient Aliens, as well as some of the other areas you investigate?
Yeah, Warwick Associates, I think, who sent you Philip's book, they sent a copy to me as well, The Ancient Alien Question. And, it looks, haven't started reading it yet. It only came through a couple of days ago, but it's like 300 pages long, I think, just about. And, it covers everything. It's got things like, the construction of the pyramids and the mysteries relating to how they may have been put together, and crystal skulls, and the stories about ancient aliens, being responsible for some of the sort of old mythologies and legends and things like this, and a lot of colour pictures in the centre, and so it looks a good book. Nazca lines. So in other words, if you're into ancient astronaut stuff, that's a good one. And I've actually got another book coming out next year, in June of next year, which is already on the New Page Books website, who putting out Keep Out, and the new one. It's called The Pyramids and the Pentagon, and it's a study of how the US government has taken an interest in a lot of ancient astronaut-themed stuff, and so that'll be out in June of next year.
Oh, wow, that sounds exciting. And Nick, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever told you this about me before or not, but the ancient astronaut and ancient religions, mythology, alchemy, hermetic tradition, all of that's all my favorite forte. That's the stuff I've been researching for 25 years or a little bit better now, either on TV and books, on the internet, different articles, or wherever I could find information, talking to people that like Philip Coppens and Giorgio Tucolos, and trying to learn what I could as I could go.
Well, yeah, I think anybody, with even half a brain, you can look at some of these ancient structures from, thousands of years ago. And, people say, oh, well, they were built with, like, pulleys and ropes and ramps. And you're talking about rocks and stones that weigh, like, 25 tons, and it's just like, okay, well, explain exactly, how you do this with ropes and pulleys,
And how you do it for over 100 miles from the quarry.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, to me at least, there's no doubt that we've kind of lost touch. I truly believe it. I think, ancient man knew something or had access to either technologies or powers or something that today we've lost or forgotten, that allowed for, sort of the massive movements and sculpturing of gigantic stones and rocks that allowed them to move them with incredible ease in a way that, we just don't know how they did it. And of course that again, obviously opens the door to, well, where did they get that information and technology from, But I think for me that's the most noticeable thing about, the ancient astronaut scenario is just these huge structures and how they could be done then, and we're still arguing thousands of years later today as to how they did them,
And you have to wonder, how thick-headed a people can be to still be arguing about that over such a long, extensive period of time, in other words.
Well, I think a lot of people, particularly mainstream archaeologists, they kind of are a little bit frightened of the idea that there could be something about the past that's so life-changing, potentially, that they don't want to deal with it because it's too challenging. They'd prefer to stick with convention. But, clearly to me, convention doesn't work when it comes to, addressing how, high, for example, in the South American mountains, massive rocks were transported up there. Or even like with Stonehenge in England, where I'm originally from, some of the huge stones there that weigh like 4 tons were brought, more than 100 miles away from Wales. And some of the larger stones, which are actually only brought about 4 miles away, some of the bigger ones at Stonehenge, they weigh 25 tons.
Oh, yeah.
If me and you were to get a bunch of friends together, and we tried to move stones 25 tons in weight, stand them up, and then put, a multi-ton stone on top of them, using the technologies available back then, I do not believe we would do it.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you about one thing about that, though. I mean, using the technology that we know conventionally, I would agree with you. However, there is the matter of Coral Castle with Edward, and I'm probably pronouncing his last name wrong, Leeklam, the guy that weighed maybe 98 pounds, had tuberculosis.
Yeah.
He built this thing, what was he, maybe 98 pounds, soaking wet, and he built this thing with hand tools back in the 1800s before any kind of crane or anything was invented, using big stones like that. And he said that he had learned the secret of the Egyptians. And he also put out books on magnetic energy or magnetic fields or something to that effect. But the problem that I hear with it is that they were too complex to be understood.
Yeah, this guy, his name is Edward Leeds Skalnin. And what's interesting is that, you're quite right, that he did build these structures that were sort of very, in terms of the construction at least, pyramid-like. Now, there were stories that were circulated amongst the kids that lived in the area where some of them had supposedly seen him manipulating these stones, and the best way they could describe them was if somebody was just pushing like a little hydrogen balloon into the air, almost as if they were being sort of levitated somehow into position rather than dragged, pushed, or pulled or rolled. And when you talk about his work into magnetism and things like this is actually what some people think. The idea that the ancients may have understood something about levitation or anti-gravity or even possibly acoustic technology, which, acoustics can actually, acoustic force can, we're sort of understanding sort of the rudiments of it today, where it can move objects. Granted, a lot of our research is with very small objects, but, there are a lot of legends from, thousands of years ago where ancient man, people said that the stones were moved, they were made lighter than air, and they would float to the location, which, if they just come from one place, you could say, well, it's just a story. But, I mean, there's a story like this concerning the movement of the stones in Egypt. There's a story about the stones from Stonehenge supposedly being part of something known as the Giant's Dance, where the stones would sort of magically lift up and move. So, all across the world there are traditions of stones being moved what by means back then was sort of perceived as magic, or mystical methods. Today we might be inclined to think, some sort of very ancient and long-lost science was involved. Perhaps.
Right. And you know what? That really makes a lot of sense to me if there was a long-lost science. Except for one thing, you got to ask yourself, where did these ancient, people get this technology? In other words, that's where the ancient alien theory would make sense at. In other words,
yeah, I think there's two possibilities, and they could be intertwined. One could be ancient aliens, or the other one could be, as a lot of people think, maybe we're not the first civilization to reach a fairly advanced level on this planet. Maybe that there have been civilizations in some respects, our technological superiors, but not in terms of, having things like TVs and cars. Otherwise, we probably would have found some remnants of them. But perhaps sort of going off in alternative angles, using more sort of alternative technologies that we haven't looked into or uncovered, and that they vanished, and that, maybe it's their cultures that were sort of the remnants survived and then, went on to construct some of these, later structures that we have found. Maybe the originals kind of vanished 30, 40,000 years ago, and the survivors, people talk about, although it's controversial, in India, there's sort of few areas of fused glass in certain ancient ruined cities, which look just like the sort of glass found when the first atomic detonation was undertaken at New Mexico, as if we're looking at evidence of ancient nuclear warfare and things like that. So,
kind of like sort of a golden age, maybe like, say, prior to the flood of Noah or somewhere in there.
Yeah, and I mean, you only have to look at our civilization, not to be pessimistic, but we are at that brink where, we could do really well, or we could really do really badly. You look at today with overpopulation, resources eventually are going to start winding down. Things like earthquakes, the weather changing. They only need somebody to sort of press the red button and everybody starts firing their missiles off, and we're back to the Stone Age overnight. And then we start off again, and 10,000 years from now, 20,000 years from now, there's another culture. And they have these legends of this wonderful race that once existed and flew in the skies, and people say, oh, no, that's just nonsense, But it would have been us. But, we've been wiped out or whatever. So who's to say? It's our arrogance to think we're the first and best. Maybe we're just the latest in a long line. So.
That's a very distinct possibility. And I'm noticing that we got about 5 minutes remaining. I don't want to let you get out of here without reminding everybody that your website's www.nickredfern.com. You can find his books on from his website, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and bookstores all over the place. And actually, Nick, I also want to give you a chance to tell us of any upcoming things that maybe I haven't mentioned or I don't know about, or any final thoughts you might have.
Well, right now, Royce, the only one that's really upcoming is the 11-11-11 conference, which I encourage people to sort of click on the link, because there's a lot of good and very diverse lectures going on. I've actually recently done a sort of spate of lectures and conferences, one at the Conscious Life Expo out in LA, and a couple of local lectures as well. But I guess the next thing is the Keep Out book in December, and then the Pyramids in the Pentagon book in June. And sort of closing thoughts, I would just say, what I always say to people: if you have an interest in this, pursue it, because there's some sort of fascinating stuff to be found out there, and a whole range of stuff that we just don't know enough about. And I always say to people, you could be the one who goes out there and stumbles upon the answers we've all been looking for years. You don't need to be an author or whatever to find the evidence. It just requires sort of hard work, dedication, and, an open mind to go looking for these things. And, that's what I encourage people to do if you want to do it.
A little bit of stick to it. And it's, about the author part, the author really all he does is record what he's, found, basically writes it down. That's actually, from what I've heard, the smaller part of the work. The bigger part of the work is the actual looking up the information.
Well, yeah, I always say to people, the most important people, if you're working as an author, isn't yourself, the author. The most important people are the witnesses, because, without the witnesses telling their stories, I don't have anything to write about, So, in other words, the witnesses are the most important people. And then, they relate the account to us. And then it's a case of researching it further, trying to find additional witnesses and additional corroboration, etc., and try and get, build as full a picture as possible. But yeah, I always say that that's the most important thing, are the eyewitnesses. Without them, we literally don't have a thing. So.
And in my particular case, being a host instead of an author, I couldn't have my show without my listeners any more than I could without my guests. So I want to thank you listeners, like I always do my best to do before I get out of here. And I also want to thank my guest, Nick. As you know, I'm usually pretty good at trying to thank everybody. I certainly appreciate all the help I get in keeping my show going. And, all of you are important. I really appreciate you. So, Nick, I tell you what, we've been at this for roughly about an hour. I'm going to put this up on YouTube. Everybody, don't forget to come see me Saturday with Philip Coppins. It should be an interesting show. I think this one's been very interesting. Nick, it's been a pleasure having you back again. I'll probably be in touch with you when I send you the links about setting up a date in hopefully December, if not January, for the book Keep Out.
Okay, that sounds great, Royce. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Nick. You be good.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
You too. See you later.
Mm.